Hi there, Henry from 911 Virgin, the Porsche people in Uxbridge. We've done a video on the road-going GT3s and we mentioned this car, which is a GT3 Cup car. So it's actually a 1999 996 GT3 Cup car, but you wouldn't know it from the front end because it's got the later kind of Mark II front end on it. We did that because it gives you better downforce and so on, and also a bit more slippery, so slight speed advantage, so we took it. But I thought I would just go through this car because you don't often see a Cup car close up. You normally see them from the other side of the catch fencing and they're racing around. So I said at the time, you know, Porsche sold a car purely designed to be a race car, would never ever go on the road. And so I suppose, you know, why could this not be a road car? What features does this car have that you wouldn't ordinarily expect to find? It is worth saying this is one of my race cars. I haven't raced it for quite some time. It's in its working clothes. It came off a racetrack. It's actually the engine in it is a fully refreshed kind of rebuilt engine in it. Externally, they're a tool really. You know, motorsport, they say it's not a contact sport, but you get a bit of contact and you get a few marks and dinks and so on. So not too precious about the outside, but you want the mechanics to be in nice shape. So yeah, let's look at this and see how it differs from a road car. This is not quite as they came out of the factory. The racing that I've done in this, I've done a lot of endurance events, so most of these are used for the Porsche Cup, which is a one-make series. In the UK, the Carrera Cup goes alongside the British Touring Car Championship, and then you also have the Supercup, which runs alongside the Formula One campaign, or the Formula One circus, and so runs in with that. We've done some short sprint races, but most of the stuff that's been done in this has been longer events, up to and including 24-hour races. So there are quite a few modifications and changes to this car which you wouldn't get normally on a GT3 Cup car. So one of the first things is within the, if you open that, there's actually no fuel tank in there. The tank in this car has been enlarged, so for sprint racing you didn't need a very big fuel tank, but if you're going to do a 24-hour race you need a very big fuel tank because you don't want to have to keep refueling, or or if you do, you want to be able to put plenty of fuel in very quickly. And this funny device in here would be coupled with this dump tank or churn tank. You can fuel this one of two ways. You can either put fuel in here and then you locate that on there and push that down, and that does two things. It allows fuel to go in there and it allows air to escape and go back into there, so you don't have fumes going around. But if you imagine if you get your jerry can of fuel, as you're pouring it out, it kind of goes glug 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 as the fuel's trying to go out and the air's trying to come in. You have a bit of a battle, whereas with this there is no battle. The fuel is allowed to go straight down there, goes in that hole there, and then out there the air comes out and it vents the tank, so you get fuel in really, really quickly. So you either fill it with 20-25 litre dump tanks like that, or you can have a rig which has got a reservoir of fuel in it there and a pipe that comes down, and you'll see someone getting on the front of the car, pushing it down, and operates that. The other thing you'll notice on the front is this little spike here. This is an air lance. The car has a built-in jacking system, so when you come into the pits you attach an air lance to there, and that pressures 3 pneumatic rams. You can see one of them in the front here. So this is one of them in here. So that's a pneumatic ram. So air comes from the ram there, and it goes along, and it goes, where are we? The pipe's just in there. And that sends a ram out the bottom, lifts the front end up. There's then also a ram in the corner just behind the driver's seat and opposite it there. So at 3 points, car lifts up, all 4 wheels off the ground, which very quickly allows you to service the car. It's not like Formula One where you change the wheels in 2 seconds, but you can do wheel changes much quicker because the car lifts itself up and puts itself down. And once you've finished doing the work, you pull that up and that releases the pressure, and there's little springs in those which retract the ram back into its seating position, so it retracts back into the body of the ram. So I talked about the fact that we had we've got a bag tank in this, so a larger tank, and this kind of gubbins around here is all to do with that. You've got 2 fuel pumps there. You have a main pump and a reserve pump, and what the reserve pump does, there's like a swirl pot which retains fuel over and above the main tank. So once the main tank runs out, there's this little kind of cylinder of fuel which you can draw off from this point here, so you'd change fuel pumps, and you could also use that secondary fuel pump as an emergency. If the first fuel pump was not working properly, you could switch to the reserve fuel pump, which is down the bottom there. But essentially you would do it so that you'd run out of fuel, and your little light comes on, and just as it's about to cut out, you flick over to your reserve, and it is enough to get you back into the pits to refuel. You can see we've got on this car, these are Lightronic or Xenon power packs for headlights. We did in 24-hour races. Obviously part of the race is at night time, and so you need quite nice headlights, otherwise you can't see where you're going, which is quite disconcerting. And we tried all sorts. We tried mounting almost kind of spotlights on the wings just to light up the apexes and things like that, but in the end we just went for really bright non-road legal headlights, and they're powered off these driver units here. You've also got, on this particular car, 3-way adjustable suspension, and this is where you make your adjustments on the shock absorbers or the dampers. And what 3-way adjustable suspension allows you to do is you can control high speed bump, low speed bump and rebound. High speed and low speed bump. If you're going into a high speed corner, you tend to approach the corner, you'll turn the car into the corner, and the car kind of goes into the set where it's settled down. That's quite a slow movement in relative terms, so that's low speed bump. So you can make it quite stiff in low speed bump. But if you're going to go over a curb or a bit of a bump, something, you hit it and the wheel gets pushed up really hard as you're going over curbing, and that's high speed bump. And so you can allow that to happen. So you can allow the car to take some curb, let's say, the wheel to be pushed up and not to throw the car too much, but it can still be supportive in the high speed corners, so the low speed bump. The rebound is how the shock absorber or the damper extends itself, and so you can control how easy that is to extend, and that controls the weight movement of the car. So when you brake, the front of the car tends to compress, the rear of the car will tend to expand, and the weight will travel forward, and you can control how easy the suspension opens up for the rebound. And the other thing which controls the suspension on this car are the anti-roll bars. So your anti-roll bar is essentially a U-shaped piece of metal. It goes across the car. There's 2 tabs which come back here, and if you remember the 3.2 Carrera suspension, I talked about torsion bar suspension, and it twists along its length. The anti-roll bar is fixed here, and the anti-roll bar twists, so each wheel relative to the other as you're going around a corner, and the further out here that you attach the anti-roll bar link to, the more leverage it has, and so the softer the anti-roll bar setting. As you move it further into the main bar, the leverage is less and it becomes stiffer, and so it tightens it up. And in wet races you might even disconnect one of the anti-roll bar links because you actually don't want any influence of the anti-roll bar at all. You want quite stiff suspension. And whilst this wasn't the quickest car out there. You know, we are limited to 380 odd horsepower. We were very fuel efficient, which helped us a lot in the longer races, and we had the ability to put a fantastic setting on the suspension setting on the car for virtually any conditions. So Steve and the guys at Jazz Porsche are now in St Albans who ran this car. We could literally turn up at a circuit and it's wet, dry, moist, somewhere in between, and we could, and I say we, Steve and his team, would put settings on the car so that literally out the gate it's pretty much there. You might tweak it a little bit, but particularly if conditions change very quickly, they can change the settings on the car and make it a really drivable car, and that's was our biggest advantage really in the longer races. A couple of other things, you've got, obviously, to get the bonnet open, you're on bonnet pins, so you just slide a pin in there, and that, if I can get it to go in, that'll hold the bonnet in place. And there was a corresponding one on there which is inside the car, so it means that the bonnet's not going to fly open on you, which is obviously not a good day at the office if that happens. Something else you'll see just around the back here, you have, which actually isn't connected at the moment, you have an external switch which will allow you to disconnect the power to the battery, so in an emergency they could pull that and it would turn the battery off, battery master switch. And then this little button here is a fire extinguisher, so from outside the car a marshal or whatever could just come and press that, and it opens the fire extinguisher system in the car and puts out hopefully any fire. Panels on the car, it's all metal, so these are all steel panels except for the doors. The doors are very light. If you want to come around this way, composite panel doors, so there's no weight to the door at all, and what happens is it's got a very complicated roll cage in the car, and you can see for side impact protection you have immense side impact protection from here. So you've got 4 panels in, you've got reinforcement at this point here, so the door really is doing nothing at all. So there's no issue in terms of needing the strength of a door, and the door's quite a heavy panel, so it's the single easiest panel to save weight on. So composite, these are composite as well, plastic. Glass in here, again that's plastic. The vents in here help a little bit with cooling. It's a really hot, noisy environment in a race car, and one of the things that I probably discovered too late on in life really was that staying fit actually helps you quite a lot. So I used to do a little bit of swimming, but since stopping racing I've taken up a bit of cycling, and if only I wish then, or if only I knew then what I know now, because the fitter you are, the easier it is to deal with kind of heat, recovery, and also your concentration. And then for the longer races, you get out of the car, and coupled with your fitness, you're eating slow release foods like pastas and things. You wouldn't do coffee. If you drink coffee, you know, it gives you a kind of quick high, but then you've got a big low at the other side of it, and you find that the fitter you are, you can cope with it. But these are a really hot environment in here, so this was one of the things which helped put a little bit of cooling air through. But and you can't fit air conditioning because the air conditioning will sap too much power out of the engine. Wheels, you'll notice it almost looks like the wheels are kind of going to foul with the bodywork, particularly on the other side. These want a bit of refurbishment on these wheels. Obviously slick tyres as opposed to treaded tyres. In the wet you would use treaded tyres. But these here are, it's not Bow de Sear. We didn't fit these on the car so that we could go down the side of other people's cars and take them out. These are actually for transit, so these are tie down fixings, so you'd use that to put a strap so it goes into the lorry or the trailer. and then when you've arrived at the circuit, you put a gun on here, you take this centre lock off, and again, to make the wheel changes quicker, you've just got a single bolt to fix the wheel on with. You're not using 5 nuts around the wheel, it's single nut. And then when you get to the circuit, you undo that, take this part off, and you have a flat disc which goes into there. I think I have one in here actually. So that would go in its place. You tighten the nut back up, and then this just goes through there like that, and it means that that can't come off. So a simple, crude system, but very, very effective for quick wheel changing. The other feature that is worth mentioning, and I've been reminded of it trying to manoeuvre it around here to get it in position, is the steering lock on a Cup car is non-existent. It's a very quick rack, and so you have very little angle, because you know you're never doing 3-point turns to park the car up or change direction. So yeah, the turning circle on this is huge, which would make it totally impractical for road use as well. One of the things which we worked on quite a lot was the rear spoiler on this car. So when these came out of the factory, the Carrera Cup or Porsche Cup is very regulated. You know, they literally have to be exactly the same car, whereas when we're taking these out to compete with other cars and other marques, we've got some freedom. So we might be competing against Ferraris or BMWs or Marcoses or whatever it may be, and so in that instance we made some mods. So this is both a higher wing, because actually it's the higher you go, the much more effective the downforce is, because it's in the flow of air. This little flap across here, a gurney flap by, I think it was Dan Gurney, I think, and he worked out that this tiny little bit of aluminium gave you quite an amazing amount of downforce. It just disrupts the air and pushes it down. So going to have that on there, and also there's some little modified panels just in here to help push air in. I think I'm right in saying that the RS, the GT3 RS road cars had this on as well, and that actually puts air into there. Potentially you can hook that up so that it's actually not this air filter but a different air filter which seals with this panel here, so it's some degree of forced air into the car. Might give you as much as 10 horsepower, but you wouldn't see that horsepower featured on dynos, because obviously you're not seeing the air through the car. But if you're doing 140 miles an hour, there's flow of air into the engine just to give you a little bit of extra power potentially. Looking in the back of the car here, you've got another 2 corresponding adjusters for the rear suspension, because obviously the car has 4 shock absorbers or dampers on the car, so those 2 are just the adjusters for the rear, so high speed, low speed, bump, and also rebound on there as well. So inside the office, obviously you'll notice that the steering wheel is not attached. It's not some fancy fly-by-wire system. When you're getting in and out of these, it's quite a tricky job to get in and out. So when the steering wheel has a quick release on it, so we pull a little lever and it comes on and off, and it allows you to get in and out. Otherwise you're fouling with your knees, and particularly when you've got a multi-driver event and you need to change drivers quickly, you take that off, hang that up and do your driver change. But yeah, so you've got a steering wheel which comes off there. Gearbox. So the 996 Cup car has a standard H pattern gearbox. The 997 Cup car has a sequential gearbox, so you're just pushing forwards and backwards, and you can actually make changes without using the clutch in a sequential gearbox, which makes it very quick. This is a less quick gear change theoretically, but it's really dependable. You know, we've done, well, 42,000 kilometers and the gearbox has been apart, but essentially they're a very reliable H-pattern gearbox, and once you get used to it, it's not a difficult thing to live with. We've got a few things on here. We have some little shift lights which come up, so to give you an idea as to where you are in the rev range. You get a feel for it and you know anyway, but when it's you got your helmet on, it's a really loud environment, sometimes you just need a little visual on there just to let you know you've hit the sort of rev limiter, or you're getting close, you might change gear. We've got a data logger in here. These days these have been superseded and are much more modern, but in its day this was quite an advanced data logger. And as you're driving around, this actually maps the circuit out and will, on a computer screen, show you a map of the circuit, and you can see exactly how quickly you are going at any given point on the circuit. You can see how much you're braking. You can say your throttle opening, so you'd come into the pits and say, yeah, I was flat on the throttle going through that corner, and the race engineer would just plug the computer and say, no, you had a small lift, you're at 80%, you need to put your foot down. And I always remember Blanchemont at Spa is a very, very fast left-hander, and the first few times you go to it, you always have a little comfort lift, and you'd come in, were you flat through Blanchemont? Yeah, I was flat. And of course they look on the data and say, no, you had a lift. And so I had to put my right foot over my left foot and just sort of hold it down, so my left foot was trying to come off, my right foot wasn't. And once you've made it once and not died, you realise you can do it, and you carry on and do it again. There's also a little thing which just tells me lap times there, so you know what your last lap was as you're going round. Here you have your fuel override, so that's the secondary fuel pump on there, which when you're reserve or if you've got a fuel problem. Sorry, actually no, that's the main fuel pump override, and that's when you've got on the reserve tank, so you take your fuel from the reserve tank on this one. You have a warning for engine temperature if that gets hot. This car's slightly unusual. It's got a heated front screen in it. You wouldn't ordinarily have heated front screens, but in longer races, if it's a wet race, one of the hardest things is to actually see, because it's hot, it gets very misty, and so you can find that your front screen mists up, you can't see what you're doing, so that just gives us a chance to put a heated screen on and does some demisting. That's the main battery isolator, so that'll turn all the power on and off. This is, funny enough, a fan button, so when that ignition is on, that gives us a fan, and that blows out through a motor in there, so all the heating system's taken out of the car, but we put an additional cool air fan just to direct cool air onto you to try and stay cool. And then that's your fire extinguisher, so if it all goes wrong, you press that and hopefully it puts fire extinguishing from the reserve in here, and it's a pressured system which points nozzles at you to allow you to get out of the car and stay safe, and that's also to do with the testing for the fire system on there as well. And the only thing other thing we have here is this, which is radio. You wouldn't always have radios in race cars. It depends what you're doing. If they're small sprint races, very often you don't have them, but particularly because we're doing longer races, it's quite a tactical thing, and you can often have quite long conversations with your sort of pit wall as to what's going on and what the weather's doing, how you are in relation to fuel and various things. So that's quite useful, and you'd have a little button on the steering wheel which you press, and then you've got in-ear buds which are fitted to your ears, and a little microphone in your helmet, and so you can chat to the guys on the pit wall. And every time you do a driver change, you pull your connector out there, and everything goes through your helmet, and it connects back in behind your car. Seat actually in this car is the wrong seat at the moment. It's we have a Recaro, much thinner seat, but this is, I'm not too sure why this is in here, but it's in here anyway. These were the two, I don't know if you can see that, there's one ram here and another one on the other side, so this is the other pneumatic ram which shoots down to lift the car up. So when they put the lance in the front bonnet there, that goes down, the one behind my seat goes down, and the one in the front well goes down, and that lifts the car up, and you can then get lifted up in the air, so you can change your wheels. I don't know if you can see in the back, it's a bit messy in the back, but you can see how it's quite a complex arrangement for the roll car. Roll bar. It's not just a simple, basic roll cage. You have additional spars giving you extra support in various places. You've got the engine management system there, and you sort of see, I mean, these elements like the wiring harness will be in a standard road car as well for the lights and so on. But yeah, the only other thing we've got, if we hop out, just we have a slightly strange design on the back window here. One of the problems we had with the 24-hour races or night races was you'd overtake someone and there's no correlation between the brightness of their headlights and the speed of their car. So you'd overtake someone and there's these massive headlights in the back and you think, oh crikey, it's a Mosler or something like that. And it's not, it's the car you've just overtaken. So to stop the glare from the headlights, we put this film on here which allows you to see out a little bit, but it stops the lights coming in and dazzling you. And besides, it doesn't really matter who's behind you, just focus on who's in front of you and they'll sort themselves out. Yeah, so I hope you've kind of found that of interest. It's one of those things that you wouldn't potentially get to kind of see inside race cars. As I say, you see them from afar, and in the proper formulas like Formula One, they don't want you to get anywhere near the cars so you can see their technology. But yeah, just gives you a bit of an insight into a car. This, as I say, it's kind of a bit like Trigger's Broom. So this isn't exactly as a 1999 GT3 Cup car evolved and came out of the factory. You know, we've evolved it for our particular racing, which, you know, was longer endurance races. But yeah, I hope you've found that useful. As ever, thanks for watching the videos. Thanks for the people that are subscribing to the YouTube channel, much appreciated, thank you. And also the people that you know, make comments. We sort of take note, and indeed this set of videos has been made as a result of a comment. Someone said, you know, what about 996 GT3s, and here we are. So yeah. In the meantime, I'm Henry. We're 911 Virgin, the Porsche people in Uxbridge. Stay safe. Many thanks for watching. Goodbye.